So this is what Bok Choy planted on September 29th looks like. And this is Bok Choy that was planted on September 22nd. So as you can see, these plants are about twice as big as the first plants that I showed you, because these were planted 1 week earlier. That's how much 1 week difference makes in the fall when you're planting for the winter. That applies to pretty much everything. Now, these Bok Choy are pretty much mature at this point. They actually kept growing all the way through November and even into December a little bit, because we've had a really warm winter so far. It's December 20th right now, so we're a day away from the winter solstice. With winter growing, everything is pretty much supposed to stop growing on your last 10-hour day in your climate, which for us is November 7th here in Wyoming. And that date depends on where you're located in the globe for growing in the winter. But the whole idea is you need to have a schedule of all the crops that you want to grow in the winter, and there's a whole laundry list of crops that can work depending on your climate and your protection that you have in the winter. This is a really fancy greenhouse that I'm in right now, but you could do the same sort of thing in a less high-tech greenhouse or even a low tunnel. But basically the whole idea is you're using a fall planting calendar or winter, depending on how you look at it, and you want to start your crops at the correct date. And there's some great schedules out there that I'll put in the show notes to use at home for when you want to try this at home. So for example, Bok Choy in my climate is supposed to be started around August, the last week in August, so about August 25th. So that means I have to seed this Bok Choy August 26th. It doesn't necessarily mean I seed it in the ground. I can seed it in a plant tray or something like that, but the seed needs to be planted on that date. And it's anywhere between 10 and 8 weeks before the last 10-hour day is what you're supposed to do for Bok Choy. So I think August 25th was about 9 weeks, so that's what my guess was. So I started both of the Bok Choys on that day in my nursery, and they grew for about 4 weeks in their plant trays, and then I transplanted them at a week difference. And that's where you see the difference here. So these were transplanted 1 week earlier, and the transplants were a little bit smaller, and then they were a little bit bigger when I planted them in the other greenhouse. But as you can tell, putting them in the ground earlier makes a huge difference in the fall, because daylight hours are going down every day, and they kind of accelerate. It's like an exponential curve from the day you plant. So the actual daylight hours start to go down even more, and they stop going down basically tomorrow for us, which is the winter solstice. And then after tomorrow, December 21st, the daylight hours will start to increase, and basically plants are going to start growing regularly again under a greenhouse around February 4th, because that's the first 10-hour day. So that 10-hour day period is sort of the time winter and fall growers, mostly winter, that's what's called the Persephone period, where daylight is under 10 hours and plant growth really starts to take off again. So these Bok Choy we're actually going to pretty much harvest basically tomorrow. I'm going to harvest the rest of these. That's why I wanted to do this video today. But it's just really interesting to see how big of a difference 1 week makes when doing your winter-fall planting. As you can see, this Bok Choy right here is actually so big it's gone to flower, which means it's grown way more than I expected. The whole this winter so far has been incredibly warm, so that's why a lot of this stuff is growing faster. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because I thought it was really interesting. I've never actually seen it that big of a difference, because most of the time when I plant Bok Choy, I plant direct seeds right in the ground, but this time I actually transplanted, and these are almost double the size, as you can tell, of the 929 planting. So that's just a little note that I'm going to put in my planting calendar. I have a little Excel sheet that I keep to make records of all this kind of stuff, because I have that planting schedule for the winter, but the only way to really know for sure is when you do it yourself, because there's a whole bunch of other factors. So those schedules are really helpful at the beginning when you've never done this kind of stuff before, but the best way to get really good at fall, winter, and even spring planting is making records yourself of your garden. If you're a gardener or if you're a farmer, making records of that stuff and planting a week or two before or after that date next year. So I'm going to remember that for this bok choy is I'm going to plant it no later than September 22nd in the ground, because it kind of this tells me that the actual seeding date didn't matter quite as much, but the actual date in the ground did. And if I was going to only direct seed this bok choy, which means just putting seeds right in the ground, I probably would have planted it last week in August, about August 25th, to get a full mature crop, because this is almost twice as much food as the other greenhouse, just because these are so much bigger. So that's a huge deal, whether you're growing for your homestead or growing for market. So twice as much food is twice as much calories, so it's a big deal. It's worth writing this down, because you'll never remember. I mean, I don't know, maybe some of you can, but I definitely can't. So I write this stuff down, and it makes it so you're more productive every year. You can make the better use of all of the real estate you have to grow in. So anyway, just thought that would be a fun little tip, maybe get you a little inspiration to try winter growing, and hope you liked that, and we'll see you in the next one.